Thank you, Rob. I'm aware today it's January 14th, and just yesterday, the House, the National House, passed the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act, not by a very big majority. And we know that those bills face an uphill battle, or whatever we want to call it if we don't use a military metaphor. Some difficult times ahead anyway in the coming week. And it's not lost on me or any of us, I think, that we also celebrate the life of Martin Luther King Jr. this same weekend. So I thought I'd just think briefly about that. I gathered some information about events happening in the greater Tacoma area, and I'm asking Teresa to put it in the chat. I have to learn how to do that as a document yet. So she'll do that at some point soon. I just wanted to make a couple of comments connecting King to our work. And in 1965, Martin Luther King began leading the Chicago Freedom Movement, a campaign that challenged housing discrimination in Chicago. It advocated for open housing, the right specifically for Black Americans to buy homes anywhere. The campaign used a testing method that exposed discrimination by having both Black and white testers apply for the same housing and then reporting the discriminatory findings. As a result of this kind of organizing, the Fair Housing Act was signed into law 1 week after Dr. King was assassinated in April of 1968. While that public policy has been extremely important, the experience of discrimination, as we know, continues, with communities of color encountering predatory lending practices, higher mortgage calculations, lower housing value assessments, and a disproportionate experience of homelessness. There is still so much work to be done. We know how much political and community participation matters in safeguarding the rights of all of us to voting, to housing, to health and education. I appreciate everything everyone is doing and just encourage us all to keep our spirits high. So with that little centering idea, I want to also note that we are here, the 37 of us, 38 of us right now, in a Zoom event that we've met in for some time. And if you're new, just to let you know, so you know how we work, we have a number of norms that we've developed over time to facilitate our time together. And if Rob, if you could put those in the chat, that would be great. We ask you to keep yourselves muted when you're not speaking. And if you're doing other things, talking on the phone or doing something with your pets or other members of your household, to stop your video for that period of time. And we also ask you to use the raise hand function if you have that ability on your computer, so Rob can keep track of the order of people desiring to speak. If you can't do that or don't know how to do it, just wave your hand madly and he'll recognize, or someone else will say that you're trying to get to a hearing. We also use the chat for ongoing conversation during our meeting, so this is a time to ask questions, a place to ask questions, and put information that you'd like to share. And it's not anything that's disrespectful to the speakers. We all know we want to have good networking happen. So that's what we'd like to see happen for our Zoom call. And our community norms basically are asking us to be very respectful for each other and to be aware of how issues of race and equity affect us in all parts of our lives, so that we take responsibility for the things we say and do, even if we don't have intentions that might be nefarious. So with that, I'd like to welcome everybody, and especially welcome anyone who's new. Our usual practice is to just ask you to say hello. Let us know if you're from an organization or a group that it would be good for us to know about. And then we'll proceed with the meeting. So if anyone is new, just go ahead and unmute yourself and let us hear that you're here.
Hey everybody, it's Kathy Ryan. I'm back. It's been a month or so. I just want to let you know that I got hired at the Pierce County, well, it's not Pierce County, it's actually state, Department of Corrections. I'm the new training and development manager. And today is day 10, so I've only been doing it for a couple of weeks. So I'm very interested in any kind of future training coming up. And I'll put my new email in the chat box.
That's great, really, Kathy.
Really nice seeing everybody again.
It's nice having you, and I know there'll be folks who will want to contact you, so that'd be great to put your name in there and contact
awesome.
info.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Nicole.
I'm a student with University of Washington, precepting with Julie Benson this and next quarter. I'm just here to observe. I'm kind of multitasking. I invested in a co-housing international summit that's going on now. So I may not hang out the whole way because I can't do both at once, I realized tonight.
Well, it's
Can't
wonderful.
figure out.
Yes, great to have you.
Recorded though.
Great to have you chime in with us when you can, and we'll look forward to hearing about the co-housing information when you have more to share.
Beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, welcome, Nicole. All right, well, if you're new or and just haven't figured out how to get onto this thing here and have a chance to put something in the chat, we're delighted to have everyone here. And Rob, I'll let you move on.
All right, thank you, Rosemary. And great to see new folks here and returning folks. So great start to the morning. So let's move on to our first standing item that we do every week, and that is This Week on the Streets. The focus of this section is to understand what outreach teams are seeing as they're going out and interacting with folks. Also, what those of us who volunteer are seeing out on the streets, with an idea of what are some needs that are out there and how the larger group here, the 48 of us, can help with that, any outreach needs and efforts. So I open the floor. One thing I will add for context, I do know that the city of Tacoma announced earlier this week that they posted to clean up a encampment at 2nd and G Street next to Wright Park. And they're working with I believe the city said there were 6 folks there, according to their estimates. That's supposed to be cleaned up next Tuesday, but they are trying to refer folks there to Aspen Court. But I'd love to hear from other folks. What are you seeing this week? And maybe we haven't had a chance to be out a whole lot this week. Andrea?
Yes, good morning. Please excuse the lack of video. I am multitasking. Friday mornings turn busy for me. I've just been out seeing my usual folks I visit near 72nd and Pacific, and I'm just, seeing the same, they're cold and wet. And some of them just aren't ready for services yet, but hoping with the new mitigation site going in at 82nd and Pacific that a lot of the folks that they just basically travel from 38th back up to 96th and back down the other side. Pretty much I watch them throughout the month move and find them, and I'm hoping that'll maybe encourage some of them to get more assistance when they see something working in their neighborhood. So yeah, just cold and wet mostly. People have been really generous with hand warmers, and Monique from Forward Operating Base Hope hooked me up with our program director, and we're going out on the 21st to an encampment to provide some hygiene and snack bags and all that good stuff. So I'd like to thank them, but that's about it.
Thank you for that update. And I can attest, last weekend I also was running in the neighborhood down by 72nd and McKinley behind the Planet Fitness, and I could attest folks were cold and wet there as well. And of course it got wetter during the week. Teresa?
Well, since there's some spare time in here, something that sometimes people out there don't think about, and most people who are going out doing outreach in some way do get this, but a message to send out is that the fact that there aren't any solid places for people to stay is more than just the fact that people end up staying sometimes in public right-of-ways. It's also that the people who are in these communities can build a strong community, but one person can come in from outside. And I've witnessed this a few times in the last week. Someone who is a bully or someone who is just a predatory sort of person, and it can really, everyone has to deal with it. There's nowhere for people to go. So that's one of the consequences of not providing safe community space where people have some kind of control over what their community looks like. Just want to throw that in there. It's been troubling me this week.
Thank you, Teresa. And anyone else with some thoughts about what they're seeing on the streets this week? All right, so there is, I will remind folks that we do retain the chat and use that as an active part of every meeting. So if you do have other updates that you would like to share and you don't feel like doing so verbally or on screen, please feel free to use the chat. Also, if just something comes to mind about something you observed during the week that you think would be good for all of us to have in our awareness, you can use the chat to share that as well. But let's move on with this morning's meeting. So I am going to hand off to Lori Davenport, who I'm actually making a co-host right now so she can share some slides. Lori is going to talk about an update on tenant rights and eviction protections and where things stand now at the beginning of this new year regarding those who might be getting evictions in our community. So Lori, you have the floor.
Great, thank you, Rob. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I think this is a really good time to share this information, and we actually have a little PowerPoint that our Housing Justice Project created to talk about the new laws and what's happening, what we all need to know. And I kind of tagged onto the end of it some information about, because we had talked a little bit about legal financial obligations as well, and we're going to be talking about that more later as we kind of develop our program to deal with those. But there are a couple court decisions that kind of belong in the same category with new stuff that people might not know about that affects the populations that we work with. So I'm going to share my screen and go to that PowerPoint. God, I have way too many things. Okay. Okay. We're getting there. I have a new computer. Uh-oh. I think I have to leave and come back. Sorry.
Okay. We need theme music for these transitions, I think. Maybe we just need theme music overall. So Maureen, you asked real quick, since we have a moment, you asked about whether people watch the various homelessness pages on Facebook. What prompted that?
No, when we're talking about, on the streets, and one of the streets, it seems to me, is Facebook. And there are, 4 or 5 different that I see. And I'm just curious if anybody is watching. I know some of them are strictly mutual aid and they don't want information on availability of the kinds of resources that governments might fund. But nonetheless, I was just, Delmar used to watch some of them because I used to see his responses. I'm not sure that he has time to do that anymore.
Yeah. All right, Lori is back.
I'm
She is
back.
now a co-host again.
All right.
There we go.
And all right. So you can now see my slideshow, hopefully. Is it looking good?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So we're talking about the new tenant protections that the legislature passed. Basically, there are a lot of new tenants' rights in Washington's housing law and a couple of court decisions that also affect access to housing that we want people to know about. And the new landlord-tenant laws, we're going to talk about repayment plans, late fees, other stuff that's different, and really nobody really has, a lot of the people we interact with don't understand what's required for a repayment plan, when late fees are okay, when they're not okay. It's very confusing. So there's a lot of new rules. And because like you can't have too much chocolate, you can't talk about the ERPP enough. So we're going to talk about the eviction resolution pilot program, because again, it takes a while to kind of get it through your head and understand how it works. And it's really valuable, and we all need to know what it is. Just cause evictions is a new thing. Everybody needs to know about, because in the past, landlords could evict with a 20-day notice, didn't have to give a reason. Things happened really fast. Now we got 16 reasons that have to happen. And, last but not least, we're the first state in the nation to have right to counsel, which is huge. So late fees, missing late rent, that kind of thing. No late fees for missing or late rent from March 1st through December 31st, 2021. A lot of landlords are tacking late fees on to what they're saying people owe. Not okay. Another part of this, if you're moving, your old landlord cannot tell your new landlord about any missing rent from March 1st through December 31st, 2021. A new landlord also cannot use any missing rent from that period through December 31st as a reason to not rent to you. So the good part here is landlords who do any of these things can be sued for 2.5 times the monthly rent. Now, we're not going to do the lawsuit for you, but you can go to small claims court and do that. And we can help you do that. Repayment plans. Again, if we're dealing with that unpaid rent through December 31st, 2021, the landlord has to offer the tenant a repayment plan before starting the eviction process. They have to give 14 days to respond to that payment plan. And the maximum amount any payments can be is 1/3 of the rent. That doesn't mean that's what the payments have to be. The payments have to be whatever is reasonable for the tenant. And the landlord must give at least 30 days before the first payment is due. If you agree to a repayment plan that's been offered, the repayment can come from any source. It doesn't have to be from employment. It can be from nonprofits, churches. It can be from rental assistance, wherever it can come from. They have to take it. You don't need to agree. This is really important because these things are coming with, as of November 1st, the 14-day notice to pay or vacate, which is scary, comes with the payment plan, needs to come also with an ERPP notice, but you do not have to agree to that payment plan. And that's where the ERPP comes in. The court is going to look at your circumstances, and you're going to go through the ERPP. You're going to have a chance to get it where you can afford it. And again, landlords who don't offer repayment plans can't evict tenants for non-payment. So a lot of people are receiving a 14-day notice to pay or vacate without a payment plan. That is not okay. So if that happens, contact us. So the ERPP, Eviction Resolution Pilot Program. It's a pilot program, but it's really there for a couple of years. It goes through 2023. You have to be given an opportunity to use the ERPP before you can be evicted. It's basically there to help people work out payment plans, work with rental assistance, avoid eviction. That's the whole thing. We don't want people to be evicted just because they owe rent because COVID happened. That's what this is all about. Oh, there we go. So ERPP, it's usually started with the ERPP notice, which I'll show you. That comes with, hopefully, the repayment plan offer. You have to respond to that notice. And again, that's a 14-day period of time. If you don't respond, they can start the eviction process. So that's a really crisis point right there. Don't ignore it. If you just ignore it, don't show up, the Center for Dialogue and Resolution, which participates in the ERPP, will issue a certificate which allows the landlord to start the eviction process. They have not been doing that, but they're beginning to do it. So it's really, really important to respond. That will stop that from happening. The landlord or the tenant can reach out to the ERPP when that notice shows up. The tenant can, excuse me, use the link, go to the website where the notice exists, print it out, reach out to the ERPP. It's a free service. It doesn't cost anybody anything. Okay. What did I do? Now I have to go backwards. Okay. Here we go. So here's what the ERPP notice looks like. It basically just has resources on it, identification for the tenant, for the landlord, okay. That's all you need to know, is just what it looks like, because you know, people don't know what they're looking at sometimes. So if repayment isn't an option, tenants or landlords can apply for rental assistance, obviously. Once a tenant has their rental assistance application accepted, they can't, technically they can now, but it will not happen. They're not going to be evicted for non-payment of rent. Thinking about rental assistance right now, a couple of things. If we click on the rental assistance website, we get this little box that says, the rental assistance portal is closed. That's also scaring people. I know Valerie's not here because she's on vacation, well-deserved vacation right now. But if she were here, she would tell you that it's going to open soon. It's planned to open by February 1st. It'll probably be sooner than that. They're upgrading the software, so once it's open again, it's going to be a lot easier to apply. They have plenty of money. They are still processing applications that have been received. They're still, I think, back in August or September. So if anybody here knows better than that, the point is, it takes time. Everybody has to hang in there. So that's really important to know. Moving on, because I don't want to take a whole bunch of time with this, and I will give you guys the slides. But just cause is a big deal. Like I said, in the past, a landlord could evict a month-to-month tenant with 20 days notice. No reason, take you to court. If you don't show up, you're out. And since May 10th, now we have to have one of the 16 specific just causes in order to ask people to move. And again, this part, which is pretty cool, a landlord who removes a tenant without just cause can be sued by the tenant for all economic and non-economic damages, or 3 times the monthly rent plus attorney fees and court costs. So again, we don't do that for you, but it, I'm having trouble. Okay, but you can, that's a process you can do yourself, and it's really good to know that it's there, and it's good for landlords to know that it's there. These rules aren't that hard to follow. So just cause, again, I don't know if I have skipped a slide. Yeah, here we go. Non-payment of rent, right? We've talked about that. 14-day notice to pay or vacate. The repayment plan is required. Participation in the ERPP is required. And that means that the certificate has to be issued from the Center for Dialogue and Resolution. So that's what that's all about. That's the ERPP and the whole bit. And that's going to go on for quite a while. Breach of rental agreement. You must fix the problem within 10 days or the landlord can move forward. Waste or nuisance. Again, that's pretty bad stuff, you know, and you don't have a chance to fix it. You need to call us if you get a waste or nuisance notice. That's a 3-day notice. So this is bad stuff. If the landlord intends to move into your place, selling the single family residence, or if you have to demolish, substantially rehabilitate, or change in use. Again, if you get any of these notices, contact us. I mean, the sooner we know, because of right to counsel, sooner we know what's happening, what kind of notice you have, the more we can help you, and you won't hopefully end up having to be evicted. Conversion to condominiums, condemned, shared housing with landlord, transitional housing, failure to sign new rental agreement, lying on rental application, legitimate economic or business interest. Contact us immediately if you get something like that. Repeated lease violations. That's a 60-day notice to terminate after the 4th lease violation in 12 months. And the landlord can give you that notice even if you fix the previous notice. So it's a little complicated. Sex offender registration, sexual harassment. These are all pretty obvious, but rent increases. This is another big area because people are being priced out of the places they're living in. Rent increases were allowed to begin again on July 1st, but Washington law requires a 60-day notice before that can happen. That's not happening. Landlords are raising rent just because it's not against the law to raise the rent now. They're doing it just, okay, next month you're going to pay this much more. That's not okay. You need a 60-day notice. And again, after October 31st, evictions for non-payment of rent are allowed. This is happening. People are going to get behind on rent, and people need to know that if that happens and they do owe rent, ERPP is required, regardless of any of the protections that were in place because of the eviction moratorium. Contact us if you have any questions. And a big one, right to counsel. If you are under 200% of the federal poverty level, which is not actually that low, and pretty much anybody who is facing eviction is probably going to fall in there. If you're facing an eviction hearing, you have a right to be represented by the Housing Justice Project. So that means contact us. The sooner, the better. If for some reason you can't, you just found out you have a hearing, show up to that hearing. The way they put it here is meet us in court. Seriously, because we are there. Our paralegals are there, our attorneys are there. We can help you on the spot. If you don't show up, you're going to be evicted. If you do show up, you get an attorney. Simple. Great stuff. And again, Washington is the only state that has this. Okay, the new court decisions, moving through this quickly. Drug possession convictions, State v. Blake is huge, and that's really preoccupying everybody who's working in the criminal justice area. Driver license suspensions, another huge area for our population. So State v. Blake, recent Washington State Supreme Court decision, state's drug possession law is unconstitutional. So if you were convicted of drug possession on or before February 25th, 2021, you can get those convictions cleared or vacated, we call it. That means removed from your criminal record. You may also get a refund of the legal financial obligations you paid on your drug possession case. So in addition to other possible legal financial obligations that people can get taken care of, specifically ones that were that you paid for drug possession, you can get back. That applies to people who are incarcerated, who are doing serving time in the community, and people who are no longer incarcerated. So as you can imagine, there are a lot of people working on this because this affects an awful lot of people. There's an online application to go through Pierce County Department of Assigned Counsel to get your conviction removed. And there are a couple other ways to do that as well. The Way to Justice, Civil Survival, and Northwest Justice Project. So plenty of ways to go. Really worth doing if you've got that conviction on your record. And if your driver's license was suspended, you might be able to get it back. It was decided that Department of Licensing can no longer suspend driver's license just because you have non-criminal traffic tickets and haven't paid them, or you didn't appear for a hearing. So as of June 16th, 2021, eligible licenses were reinstated. If your license expired, you have to renew it before you can drive, but you won't be charged the $75 fee. If your license is reinstated, you still owe the fines, and Department of Licensing can still suspend your license for criminal traffic violations like a DUI or reckless driving. Okay, here we go. So help with all this stuff. Fill out our online intake. We've just gone to a new system where the online intake is better and faster, and we're going to be able to get back to you faster. So that is definitely the best way to get hold of us. You can also call us. You can also, and all this information is on our website. You can also send an email to hjp@tacomaprobono.org, but contact us. Washington Law Help, I want to just show you briefly. This is awesome. So for instance, if you want to look up more about the driver license issue or State v. Blake, that's going to be under Money and Debt. Click on More Issues. There's a lot more information about that. If you want more information about eviction, tenants' rights, all the stuff we talked about here, that's on Washington Law Help. And this includes not only just explanations and information, but forms, instructions, and information in other languages, which is extremely cool. So this is through, Northwest Justice Project. So use it. And I will stop sharing, and if anybody has any questions.
Great, thank you, Lori. So one question I had, Lori, is are we seeing the tsunami of evictions that we were worried about throughout the pandemic? Is that materializing at this point?
Not yet. We really don't know what's going to happen. We weren't seeing any non-payment evictions for a long time because the Center for Dialogue and Resolution was not issuing any certificates, but we're beginning to see those. It's happening. And we're seeing, of course, other types of just cause evictions. I think the way our staff attorney put it most recently is it's kind of we're kind of in a good place right now. We have the capacity to handle everything that's happening, but we're seeing on every docket, we're seeing 12 to 13 cases, which is a lot. Not a tsunami, we're handling it, but not yet. We're doing okay.
Thank you. So Jennifer had her hand up first and then Kat.
I just wanted to elaborate on that briefly because our housing team was discussing that yesterday at NJP. We're not seeing a tsunami per se, but we are seeing, as of December, we've started seeing large numbers of evictions. And in fact, Pierce County had significantly more evictions filed in December than any other county in the state, including King. We have like twice as many as King filed in December. So. Oh. It's happening.
Yeah. Yep. Thanks, Jennifer.
And just for context, that's even with a rental assistance program that was one of the best in the region, if not the country. So
in the country, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, we knew this. This is kind of a center of the universe for evictions.
Yeah.
So I just had a quick question. And just a short story. I was working with a client that was served a 60-day notice for her rent to be raised. She was outside of her lease. She wanted to move because she was receiving a voucher. The landlord was raising her rent every 30 days with a 60-day notice. How many times can a landlord raise the rent? Is that legal to continue to raise the rent every month? That's my question.
I don't know the answer to that. Jennifer, do you know? Oh, she disappeared.
Not off the top of my head. Kathleen?
Yeah, Kathleen, you're next.
I would say no, because if they're on a month-to-month lease, they still would have to provide a 60-day notice of every rental increase. So at most, they could raise it every 60 days, unless they were actually submitting a 60-day increase every month.
That's what they were doing.
Oh. Let me find out more
Wow.
about.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a really good question.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll find out more.
Thank you.
So any other questions for Lori and or Jennifer, since we got Jennifer on the spot?
Yeah.
And Kathleen.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
So there is a lot of interest in your presentation, Lori. So if you can start probably by, if you can, dropping it in the chat.
Yeah.
And
Drop
then-
I'll drop the PowerPoint into the chat, and also a document that has all of our information handouts in it that we're giving out when we go to our pop-up events.
Yeah, that would be great.
All right.
And we'll work on highlighting this on the pchomeless.org website.
Great.
Okay, so let's shift on to our next topic. Thank you again, Lori. So we wanted to get a housing voucher update from Jenny. So Jenny, you want to take it away?
Hi, everybody. Jenny Lorton with Inside Passages, Pierce County. We are supporting the Tacoma Housing Authority emergency housing vouchers, but I do also have an update on the Pierce County Housing Authority vouchers because I'm working closely with them now in negotiating, supporting those vouchers, as well as kind of what's going on with their vouchers until we fully officially have an agreement there. So currently we have 46 rapid rehousing households that we are working with at various stages of the voucher process. We have 18 diversion households that we are supporting at various stages of the voucher process. We currently have 42 households vouchered. So they have vouchers in their hot little hands. We do expect probably about another 10 to be coming through over the next week. THA also had some illness hit them this past week. So that has delayed things. We too at Inside Passages also had some illness hit us as well. So I think everybody has been feeling that impact, and it's been putting some things on pause and on hold. So we're working through that. We currently have 13 households that have been housed. So leases signed and they're housed, and they're in place. So of course our bottleneck is we have 42 people with vouchers in their hands, and finding them housing, of course, is our bottleneck. So that's where we're at with that. We do have a total of 135 Tacoma Housing Authority vouchers, right? So that leaves us with 75 more vouchers to go. So we are working through that, but of course with illness, we've had some new folks come on board in the last couple of weeks. So I have 5 new team members. 3 of those will be 100% dedicated to EHV. So we should start being able to turn through these a lot faster. Update on Pierce County Housing Authority. Pierce County Housing Authority had 1 single dedicated individual working on their vouchers. She unfortunately has had to go out on medical leave. So they have hired a new individual. Her name is Crystal, and she was previously doing some outreach work for New Hope Day Shelter out in Puyallup. So she's got a lot of contacts with outreach teams and things like that. And since they are focusing on emergency shelter individuals as well as diversion, they currently have 20 households that they've been in contact with. They don't have anyone fully vouchered except maybe like 8 households that they're working on. They have maybe a couple that are fully vouchered. She is going back through their referral list and seeing if she can actually make contact with any of those households that maybe previously were marked as couldn't contact them, because she has some really great contacts across the county and seeing if she can locate those individuals. So that number has gone up to 20 thus far, but she's still working through that list. So her and I have been in close contact over the past couple of days as she kind of works through HIMIS and gets a better understanding of that system. For those of you who don't know, HIMIS is our homeless management information system. It's our centralized database that we use across the system to kind of track our households, know where they've touched the system, if they've been in shelter, the programs they're working with. And that's super helpful when we're trying to locate a household for something like this. That's really exciting and letting them know, hey, you've received a voucher. So her and I are working closely on that as well. That's my update. Is there any questions from anyone? Thank you, Jan. Thank you. It's very exciting work that we're doing. It can get really challenging for some households when, you know, we move to the housing navigation piece and we're trying to go out and we're trying to get them housing. FMR, so that's fair market rent. The FMR amounts that are set for their vouchers, of course, are not at all competitive. They're very, very low. So trying to find housing in an already incredibly challenging market that meets that FMR is a challenge, but we're making it happen. We do have people that we've gotten into housing. So it takes time. You know, when you make the phone call to a household and you say, you've received a voucher, the households say, yay, and they think they're going to have housing the very next day, right? And so kind of tempering those expectations and letting them know there's some things that have to happen, paperwork and getting it processed, and then working through the housing piece. It's difficult, you know, and it's challenging, but we're working through it. And everyone that we've worked with, all of the households are so incredibly grateful. And, you know, getting to that lease signing process and seeing their faces when they walk into their new housing is wonderful. It's really, really wonderful.
Thank you, Jenny. And one last call if anybody has questions.
Just a big shout out to the team, our team. They're wonderful and fantastic. And we certainly couldn't be doing this without our team is wonderful. I am very much just in a support, you know, role for my team. They're amazing and wonderful. They just escalate things up to me when they hit a brick wall with a landlord and I need to call and maybe like twist an arm or something like that. But my team has been awesome. They're just wonderful. So big shout out to them for all the great work that they're doing. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jenny. So let's shift gears. We wanted to do a breakout discussion this morning, and the topic that the folks in the steering committee meeting discussed earlier this week was, why don't we ask people what kind of communications they want to hear? How do you want to hear about coalition business in 2022? What should we be enhancing that already exists, and what are we missing? So this section of the meeting is essentially small breakouts of 5 or 6 folks in every room. And if somebody in each room could take some notes and share those in the chat when we come back, that would be great. We also will come back and do a poll on this same topic at the end of this 15-minute section. So let me get rooms set up. And we will start our discussion. We will come back here at 10 o'clock and do a quick poll and then go on from there. All right, so welcome back, everybody. If you did have somebody in your group during the breakouts who is keeping track of things and taking notes, please paste those in the chat. One quick question before I do our quick poll about communications. It seemed like we had a number of people who got bounced out of breakout rooms this morning because either they weren't able to hear or they weren't able to speak. Was that widespread or just happening to a handful of folks? I'll assume it was just a handful of folks, but
Yeah, this is
if-
Ivan. We didn't have that problem.
okay, good. Yeah, because if it turns out that we're running into Zoom technical difficulties, I don't want to spend too much time with some folks just not being able to participate in the breakouts. So I appreciate that, Ivan and Paula in the chat. So while you're pasting your notes into the chat, we're going to do a quick poll about preferred communication. So the question here is, how do you prefer to receive communication? And we've got a few options: listserv, through the coalition website, Facebook, text message, announcements at a coalition meeting, or other, which for the other, you can just use the chat to make suggestions. So we'll run this here for a few seconds just out of curiosity to see what folks think.
You just pick as many as you want.
You know, I am not 100. So Garrett set this up.
Yes, it says
Yes.
multiple.
Okay, awesome.
Oh, right, there it is, multiple choice. Thank you.
And if Zoom is working for Richard all the way in Lima, then, you know, we should be okay. All right, so about 30 folks have participated. I'll give this another 10 seconds and then we'll end the poll and share the results. All right. So you should see the results. 71% of you prefer to receive information on the listserv, 58% on the website, 16% on Facebook, 23% on text message, which we don't currently really do. So that's a good thing to learn. Announcements at the coalition meetings, 42%, and then other gets 6%. So let me do a quick screenshot of this so I retain it. Great. And we will move on with our meeting. So thank you everybody for participating in that. So let's shift gears to our regular government updates. Do we have anybody from the city of Tacoma on the call today for an update? Okay, so I did not receive an email from the city today. So other than the information that I shared earlier in the on the streets section about the 2nd and G Street camp activities, I don't have other updates from the city of Tacoma. I can say that the city council's community vitality and safety committee met yesterday. Linda Stewart did do an update. It was just an information update to the council members who are on that committee regarding questions that had been raised at the end of last year about the encampment ban potential. And so I have notes from that meeting, but nothing new was decided in terms of what's going to move forward there. As a reminder, that committee has agreed to gather additional information and come back to the full city council sometime during the first quarter of this year with information regarding the potential encampment ban. So let's shift gears over to Pierce County Human Services. Jeff, do you have updates for us?
Hi. The only update I have is 2022 homeless point in time count. It's around the corner, January 27th, 28th. It's 2 weeks away. A lot of planning is going on. I've sent some emails to some folks asking for some information. I'm kind of having a challenge getting information back. What I can say is we have just under 100 locations that unsheltered people currently are living at on our list. We're missing locations out in the Sumner, Bonnie Lake area out that way. There's nothing on our list for that, and Lakewood. So I'm going to still reach out to some people. If you're on my email chain and I asked you to give locations you're aware of by end of day today, I'd appreciate if you could respond, because this is our count. It's not a Pierce County Human Services count. It's a community count, and it takes all of us to make this count be successful. So we're moving along pretty well. All the trainings are next week. So if you plan to volunteer, all volunteers must sign up, even outreach teams or outreach workers that work with agencies that we fund must sign up. So we have accountability for all folks who are going out and doing the point in time count. So trainings are on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So I'd encourage you to register. If you want to register, you can just Google the 2022 homeless point in time count Pierce County, and it should take you, the first option would be the registration page to registration for the count. That's my biggest focus right now. I've asked other folks on our team if they had any updates for today, and no one had anything else to share. So we're focused on that point in time count and making it as successful as we can.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Did I miss it? Did you say how many folks have volunteered?
Oh, it's not as large as in the past, but we're okay with that because of COVID. But we're right around 160 volunteers currently. But
Okay,
I do
great.
know that there are several folks who work with outreach teams who are not registered. So as I said, if you work with those outreach teams, the requirement is that you register so that we know who's going out and doing the work.
Great. Paula Anderson, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, Jeff, I just wanted to double check. I thought I heard the last time we talked about registering locations that you just said to register. So if I register myself, does that indicate to you that we would be a site for volunteers to come to, or how is that being done when you want to register your site?
That would be a separate conversation. I'll take a note on that from you, Paula. I've got a note. We can chat about that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeff.
And we're not using as many sites for the types of activities because of COVID, because of the Omicron variant. We're trying to limit what we're doing and how we're doing so we make sure that folks are safe. And just to be transparent, the bulk of communities in the state of Washington have delayed their point in time count. They're not doing their point in time count until the end of February, which the federal government has said is allowable, because typically it's the last week of January. So yeah, we're continuing with our count because of all the things that are in place and planned, but we just need to think safety with regards to people's health and the Omicron variant and how easily that is contracted, if that's the right word. Yeah.
Maureen.
It's not a pit question. Are we ready for another question for Jeff?
Sure.
So Jeff, since you have nothing to do, with pit, et cetera, but I think one of the things that would help those of us who are not providers, and even some who are, is if you could regularly remind us on Friday morning of what NOFAs are open and the link and what decisions have been made, who's funded and for what. I just think it gives us a better sense of how the system itself is expanding and changing.
Yeah, and that's something that I ask for all the time, and I want to give that information. Currently, we don't have anything out there as far as funding opportunities. We do have one that closed, but what I was told late yesterday afternoon is that hasn't officially been announced. So once it's officially announced, I'll be sharing that information. So yeah, that's something that I believe strongly in sharing. It's just that there's nothing to share at this point.
I think that would be good. Thanks. And I think even if when you have closed something and you can't announce the decision, just say that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And it just keeps closing loops for people who want to, it gets us out of the narrative of the county never tells us anything about the money.
Well, I want to, and when we have something open, I share it. But I don't work on every funding opportunity. There's other staff that work on those, so they need to to provide me information. And I ask every week, just so you're aware, I ask our manager, I ask John Barbie, Delmar, Algie, Anne Marie Edmonds, the whole other folks on the team, any updates for the coalition with anything that we do. And so I share whatever's provided, but that is a high priority for me, is funding. I wanted to share something today, but I was told it's not public knowledge. So I have to wait.
Can I just add to that conversation by saying I had a meeting with Anne Marie, and there's a place where you can register and it will send you everything as it comes out.
Correct. We have a master email list when NOFAs are released that it does come out. Correct. If you want to get on that list, you could let me know and we could add you to it.
Perfect. That's great.
And that's not just homeless, that's all funding opportunities that come out of Pierce County Human Services.
Thank you, Jeff. So we all know that Valerie's on a well-earned vacation, so we won't have an update from her today. How about from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department?
I will be filling in for Jenny today. She is out right now. So as always, first things first, we are encouraging folks to get their vaccine and their boosters. Excuse me, as far as isolation and quarantine. Currently, we have 4 isolation beds available. And just a reminder that healthcare and human service providers can always make those referrals by calling our Aristo partner. For outbreaks, we have 2 shelters with positive cases right now. That would be the Nativity House and Beacon. As for immunizations, still working really hard, the immunizations team, as far as trying to get vaccines where they're needed. There are a few vaccine clinics planned at some of our partners here next week. Tacoma Rescue Mission, Aspen Court, Alzheimer all have events going. And as far as testing, I don't think I saw Cecily on the call. Chime in if you're here. No, okay, so testing, we still clearly have a high demand for community testing. The testing team is working really hard to address this. As mentioned previously, we did receive our rapid over-the-counter test kits, but those are being allocated to our shelter partners that are currently in outbreak status. Just with the limited amount of test kits at this point, we're unable to prioritize those that are not in outbreak. They're working on plans, though, to get that distributed so that we can be there before outbreaks happen. So if you are in need of testing services, go ahead and reach out to the testing representative you're already working with if you have one. Otherwise, I will pop the email in the chat who you should reach out to. That is the epitesting@tpchd.org. That's all I have for today. As always, feel free to reach out with any questions and we'll try and get those answered for you.
Great, thank you, Rachel. Any quick questions for the health department?
No question, but I was going to add that if there are veterans on here who have VA healthcare, they can go over to Lakewood and get their test.
Thank you, Monique. So let's shift over to the Pierce County Department of Emergency Management. Any updates for us, Ivan?
Yes, so we are currently tracking some river gauges and just tracking that, we are getting additional rainfall. It's going to taper off on Sunday. There's some landslide risks that we are monitoring as well. Some avalanche conditions that remain dangerous up in higher elevations. Drier and calmer conditions are expected at, definitely by Sunday. And then related to COVID testing, a lot of our DEM staff are pulled out to the field to support our COVID sites. Visit our Pierce County Emergency Management website to see where those drive-through testing sites are located. Just for everyone's awareness, our site at Lakewood is temporarily closed. We do have a site at Spanaway Park, and the average wait there is 1 hour. Actually, when I'm out there, I see people get through in 30 minutes. It depends on, what time you come in and if traffic is inundated. But if you come at a good hour, you'll get in and out in 30 to 40 minutes. Additionally, I really wanted to talk about the FAST program that I coordinate. I am actively recruiting. I'm putting some information now in the chat box. I really want to recruit folks with experience supporting our unhoused communities to become volunteers at an emergency shelter in response to a disaster. And then, but to do that, you have to attend this training so we can spool you up on what that looks like in the field. So with that, I'll stand by for any questions. Oh, and at our group, we talked about the wonderful communication during our recent winter weather snap that we just had with the snow. I thought the communication was excellent. I loved how the coalition posted everything on their website. Our social media were funneling to one spot. That was very helpful.
Great, that's great feedback.
I'm looking for the flyer. I'm going to post that flyer in the chat box. So I'll stand by for any questions, anyone.
All right, any quick questions? Just want to say I appreciate your being here, Ivan.
Oh yeah, thank you. If I have availability in the morning, I will make these meetings my priority if I'm not out doing COVID testing.
And Maureen has her hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Ivan. Will that FAST training be offered again?
Yes, so this is my first round since I've worked at emergency management. This is the first time we've opened up the program for recruitment and to train a brand new class of deployable FAST volunteers. And just for everyone's awareness, FAST volunteers are only called after shelter is open and they're site staff are saying, hey, we're getting a lot of people from vulnerable communities, limited English proficient, unhoused, or people with from the aging and disability communities. And we need someone with that experience to come in and help us assess them and support them so that they can remain in the shelter safe. That's when they contact me and I reach out to my pool of FAST volunteers. At this point, I want to recruit a brand new class of deployable boots on the ground. There's a way for you to be compensated using the per diem rate, which requires, and then an MOU with your employer as well. And we have all the equipment and resources. We just need your expertise and willingness to volunteer your expertise during a disaster.
And these would be shelters set up by DEM.
Correct. So for example, going back to the winter weather, we opened up a shelter at Sprinker Rec Center. If we had a lot of unhoused community members there, we may have a site manager working with a FAST volunteer. And then that's when I will just support those volunteers supporting the site manager actively for that kind of need. They've also helped with the recovery process to connect people with resources when we stand down those operations as well.
Thank you. Jan, you have your hand up as well.
Ivan, I think that's a great idea. Would these FAST members also be registered with the emergency worker registration with the state of Washington?
Yep. That's part of the process. There's a whole process to become spooled up and trained up, but once you're deployable, yes, you got an emergency worker card. Excuse me. Your background is completed. You finished your ICS course. And again, you got a year from start to finish to get all this done. But once you're done, you're gonna be on our list of deployable FAST members. That being said, you won't deploy every year, but it's nice to have somebody trained, especially from the unhoused community world, that can support our shelters.
I think that's a great idea. Also present your idea to the CERT teams around Pierce County.
Yes, yep, thank you. Marvin Nelman and me, we're like this.
All right. So any additional questions for Ivan, go ahead and drop them in the chat. And let's move on to our next item in the agenda, which would be an advocacy update from Maureen.
All right, I feel like I should, call this Pollyanna reports. Because, the governor's budgets, the governor's proposals, I mean, it's really pretty incredible, over $800 million, homelessness and housing. His budgets have already been heard. We signed in support of both the operating and capital budgets in both the House and the Senate. And I will, the next time I do an update, I'll send out the link to his budget package, because there are about 3 documents that are really quick reads and good, especially if you're doing grant writing or anything else. So that's one thing, the money side, that will take its own course, and everybody wants money, not just the homelessness and housing people. So, we're just, there'll be deals cut all the way along, and it's just a matter of how much we can hold on to. So following up on the Department of Emergency Management conversation, Representative Mary Levitt put forward a bill, 1620 is the number, and she actually reached out to me to make sure that we would, support it, which we are, and I did testify on it. So I don't know where it will go, because it sets up grants for local jurisdictions to respond to highly vulnerable populations, the list that Ivan gave, but the part of it that we're most interested, obviously, people who are experiencing homelessness. And the grants would go to local jurisdictions to be able for them to respond. And how the mechanics of it, all that kind of stuff, the politics around it, I don't know. It's not in the governor's budget, which is a big deal. So that's something that she will have to negotiate with the governor's office, I think. But it does 2 things that I think are important and make it important that we continue to support it however we can. One is that it does name people experiencing homelessness at the State Department of Emergency Management response level. And I think that's really important that we get that language in, because that's been part of our structural system problem, is that the people that we represent simply were not there in the pages and pages of official responses. The second thing is, based on our experience, most of it's anecdotal. A lot of these little jurisdictions don't want to come forward in a big way at this point, but they were responding. Several of them were doing something during the extreme weather. Now, West Pierce Fire did testify about setting up I'd have to go back and look whether they were talking about winter or summer, but in any event, they set up the appropriate center. They had people come in. They were very proud of assisting one apparently hard to assist household they got into permanent housing somehow. So, and that's a matter of public record now. And I know of other small jurisdictions who did things like make available money for hotel rooms, but you had to know the secret phone number to call, that kind of thing. And we know Fife took a much more public position, in part because they've got those huge encampments there. So so I think that, so my point with this one was, in terms of, adding to the conversation, was that the money needed to be available to these jurisdictions ahead of the crisis, so that they could plan, they could pre-purchase what they knew they were going to need, and they could pre-position it. And they also then had the capacity to expend resources, that money, in the moment, that this would not be something that they'd be expected to front in the weather emergency and then hope that they would get reimbursement. That just doesn't work, especially in these smaller jurisdictions. So we'll see. If nothing else, there's a new conversation at the state level with the State Department of Emergency Management, and I figure that can't hurt. So that's 1620. The other one is much more fun, and some of you have been on the on an email list this morning, people I know who are doing outreach in one way or another. So this is 5662 coming out of the Senate. This is the governor's request. And Senator Cooterer out of East King County, who chairs the House and Local Government Committee in the Senate, and Senator Trudeau, our new senator from the 27th, are the co-sponsors on this, the leading sponsors on this bill. And so this bill, and I don't know if Rob's been able to keep up with me, but if he can grab from one of the emails, the bill report. I think the bill reports are always a lot easier to read unless you want to read the entire bill. But the bill report is pretty clear. So this speaks to people who are living on public rights of way, state public rights of way. And it says that, in a nutshell, that there will be created a new office which will deal with this particular issue, people who are living in unsanctioned encampments on state public rights of way. And this office will be a coordinating office across the involved state agencies, and it will be located in DSHS, which immediately raises what one person who may still be on the call called a, sort of a bright flashing yellow caution light. Especially if you've been following True Blood or some of the other, kind of specialized projects that DSHS has been asked to take on. So that's one thing. This office gets located, coordination, the intent being that people who are living unsanctioned in public rights of way, whatever the state agency is that owns those public rights of way, that the goal is that there will be what are called regional multidisciplinary teams that will be based out of this DSHS office that will cross several different disciplines, with their goal being to get folks into permanent housing. There is no mention of sweeps, of relocations, of removals, of anything. There is none of that language. Language in the bill itself is really quite amazing in terms of its respectfulness, I think, in terms of its respect for, as they say, the dignity, care, and compassion for those who are living, who are experiencing homelessness, particularly those who are living unsheltered. But so then, because Senator Trudeau was one of the leading sponsors, and because we know that it was in large part in response to Tacoma's situations over the years, I asked the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance to, help basically. And so the Alliance, Michelle Thomas, who's the policy lead for the Alliance, and Sarah Robbins, who is with the policy director for the Seattle King County Coalition on Homelessness, and then Nick Federici, who's a contract lobbyist for the Alliance, and I met virtually in preparation for the public hearing yesterday morning. And we agreed to sign in as other, and that's how our coalition signed in, because of our concern about the implementation. We thank them for the tone, the nature, the language, the intent, all of those things. But what does this really mean on the ground? And of course, for me, the big elephant in the room is, we can't get people into permanent housing who would be delighted to go right now. We all heard Jenny, an hour ago. We know people came in. We had 340, 350 more people inside during extreme weather than we did outside. So that's not the issue. The issue is, where's the housing? And what happens if these teams, no matter how good they are, don't have that housing available to them? So the governor's office comes back and said, well, it's going to be linked. The housing will be linked to what's in the capital budget from the governor for what's called rapid capital acquisition, which in the last rounds of this money didn't work out all that well for Pierce County, and didn't work all that well for anybody because it just wasn't rapid enough. So, but there's over $300 million targeted to that. So there's a lot to learn. So because we all weighed in, the three of us weighed in as other and offered to work with the sponsors and the governor's office on the bill, guess what? By last night, we had an invitation to a stakeholders meeting Monday afternoon coming out of the governor's office. So What I need, Rob, thanks for posting. There's the bill report. I don't need you to be experts on any of this. I need your concerns, your good ideas. I've already gone on record asking that these multidisciplinary teams include people with lived experience and also include people who are trained volunteers. And I'm going to add in that whatever plans get created include an extreme weather response. And beyond that, it's whatever you all bring me. Garrett had to leave the call, this meeting, for another meeting, but I did talk with him last night, and one of the things that he brought up, I think, is really important. Two things he brought up are really important. One is, okay, so we get one more team. Basically, this is a DSHS, multidisciplinary team, targeted to people who are on state-owned public rights-of-way. We have PATH teams that are funded out of the state. We have VA teams. We have, city-funded teams. We have county-funded teams. We probably have teams out there I don't know anything about. So it's one more team, okay? That's not a bad thing. So there's that. And the other one is, and I think this is part of our conversation going forward, and Jeff, I know, has already asked people on the outreach meeting list on his listserv to block more time on Tuesday. But what do we expect of outreach? Is our expectation of outreach health and safety, that people stay alive? And we all pretty much know that laundry list of what people need, medical assessments, are they warm? Are they dry? And then just on to the point where what's preventing them from getting housing. But, or is this totally focused on permanent housing? And if it's totally focused on permanent, and I don't think it is, because when you actually read the bill, you see both of these are there. It's not one or the other. It's both health and safety and permanent housing. But permanent housing is driving it. And then the question for me is, well, what happens if these teams can't find permanent housing? What happens to the people? And then there are some technical things too, like, we've got the Lake Bay Marina just got bought out by the state parks people and a private nonprofit. And so is that a public right of way? And I just don't know. But and then there's also there's some other technical things I asked Rob to follow up on. Talks about private nonprofits, but some of the community action programs are actually public nonprofits. They're parts of local government. They're not private nonprofits, including Pierce counties. So anyway, take a look at the bill report. I won't name you unless you tell me you want to be named, but whatever you can send me, like by noon on Monday, would be really good. And I've talked with Colin DeForest once, because he's got the bill and the bill report, because as you know, he's got the contract with the Department of Transportation to manage the homelessness component of the Gateway project. And so Colin said he'll take time this weekend to go through those bills, and we'll talk before the weekend is over about what his suggestions are. So anyway, those are the things that are kind of at the top of my list right now. The Alliance meetings are out of sequence with our meetings. So there will be a meeting this afternoon of Alliance advocates, and then I'll know more. If I know more, I'll do another update. And then next week, the State Advisory Council on Homelessness will meet, and the topic will be encampments again. And so I'll be attending that meeting. It's a public meeting. Anybody can attend. So it's, that's kind of where my head is at the moment. And on the good side is, as far as I know, it was on the consent agenda for the Puyallup City Council, and I presume it passed. But some of you know, a few of us have been working with mobile homeowners in Meridian mobile home estates who have a apparent legal notice to relocate. And the city of Puyallup added 2 part-time case managers to work with those homeowners, about 85% of whom are people for whom Spanish is their first language. And Jennifer tried her hardest to get a client, and Kathleen Edelwhite and Lori as well. I don't think we have a client out of that group at this point, but they do have a huge amount of support from other folks. And I'll update that laundry list of people who are involved as soon as I know more. But yeah, so, you know, the prevention, just keep thinking about prevention and documenting anything that you happen to be doing that we can use later. And I'm going to put my Garrett hat on for a moment, but think about how you want Garrett implementing that comprehensive plan, and just keep sending him messages about how you think he should do it and how you want to be a part of it. So anyway, oh, and I know the other thing is, I was sort of worried about, you know, I'm going to this session, I'm gonna have a title. Excuse me. Well, it turns out I don't need a title. I say, my name is Maureen Howard. I'm a volunteer with, and then, you know, the 85 words of the coalition's name. And in both of those cases where I did not know the chairs, that's the first thing that they've said is thank me for being a volunteer. So I'm like, okay, this works. So
fantastic.
Anyway, so thank you. You know how to find me. Oh,
thanks, Maureen.
Jennifer, can we say that out loud? I'll leave it to Jennifer. Anyway, that's my immediate world. Oh, I know. National Coalition for the Homeless. I'm on the Civil Rights Committee. We meet next week. We'll be talking about a Bill of Rights for people experiencing homelessness, among other things. So,
thank you, Maureen. So now I'd like to turn the floor over to Jan for an update from the Safe Sites for All committee.
Yes, we would like folks to attend our Monday noon Zoom meeting. We know it's a holiday, but we have been tasked to address that existential question, to be or not to be. We've been asked to talk about and define our role as a committee, as it, the purpose and the structure and all that. So I'm going to turn it over to Teresa Power-Drudas to just hit a couple of questions that we're going to talk about. And of course, we're going to talk about the constant evolution and growing movement of this safe parking network and all of that. So come for a very exhilarating time, noon, Zoom, Monday. And Teresa, I turn it over to you.
You didn't warn me you were going to turn anything over to me.
Surprise.
So I'm not entirely sure what you want me to talk about.
Well, I think that our role or our purpose is to kind of put into language the role and the structure of the committee. This coalition has been effective in large part by the committee work that has been happening throughout the last few years. So we will be identifying, putting into language some ideas of why we need a safe parking network, why we need a safe sites for all, why do we even need to meet? So that's basically it in a nutshell.
There, you said it very well. And yes, all I can add is please come on by. You can come by for one meeting, you can come by for infinite meetings. We're there and we're happy to hear anything that you might have to add about this work. And Jan is a great, you know, she doesn't normally put you on the spot like this where you don't know what's coming. She's great.
You got to be on your toes. All right. So do we have any other coalition committee updates? Rosemary, anything to share?
I was trying to find my unmute button there. Just to invite you all, if you're interested, to join the Race and Equity conversation. We'll be meeting again on February 3rd, so it's a little in the distance. We'll send out an agenda prior to that, but we're talking about ideas about how we might collaborate with other organizations in the area and do outreach. We have a flyer that we've developed that we'll be making available to people with some suggestions for a few changes at our meeting yesterday. And we're interested in perhaps having the Youth Action Board come to speak to the coalition at some time, but we're thinking about having a conversation with those young people about what they would like to tell us and planning the presentation with them. So that's an outreach thing that we're working on right now that we need to follow up with. Anyway, it's a small group right now, but if you're interested, while 3 o'clock on Thursday may not be the time that works for you, I mentioned this last week, if you could let me know that you're interested, I would make a contact with you about timing that might work better, because we'd like to make sure people can come when they're able to come. I think I'll stop with that.
Thank you, Rosemary. And at this point, we're at 10:43. We're actually on time for our agenda, so that's a good thing. So I open the floor for just some good trouble announcements. Anything that anybody, there's 40 of us still in the room. If there is information that you think would be good to share with the larger group, this is an opportunity. Jan, I see your hand up.
Project Homeless Connect has been postponed. Mike Yoder is in the room. Can you give us a little update, please?
We'll pick a date later in the spring. We decided not to hold an outdoor event at the end of January, and the county staff has agreed with that. So we'll announce it as soon as we find a new venue.
Thank you. And Rosemary has her hand up.
I just wanted to remind people of the events for Martin Luther King that are coming up. And Teresa, if you could post it again in the chat for people who came in late, that would be great. The first one that's listed there, and Associated Ministries is part of that one, that's on reclaiming the prophetic legacy. I forget the titles. Everything is a wonderful title, but that group's going to have some networking potential so people can find out about groups in the area doing work for justice. So if you're here at this meeting for the networking richness that we have, I suggest you check in with that and register for that event and join us all in conversing about what we do and what we need to do to keep this movement going. So that's my announcement.
Thank you, Rosemary. Anyone else with kind of good of the order announcements? All right, I'm not seeing any hands. So before we conclude today's meeting, I did want to ask the standing question that I do every week, offer a venue for reflection on today's meeting. What worked well? What do we need to improve for next time? Maybe what's missing? Any thoughts following today's meeting?
Rob, it's Ivan. If I may, the poll question was nice. I think that's a great engagement tool. It's also good for those who don't like to unmute or speak, to still participate. So I thought maybe that's just my feedback. I like it.
More frequent would be good. Yeah, thank you. I think I agree. It seems like people do like the polls. Rosemary.
I think that the breakout questions seem to generate a lot of ideas that if we read through them, we'll see there's some potential for new volunteer efforts that are being suggested. So if you're a person who's come to this coalition with some time and just are wondering where you might put it, there might be some things there that would be attractive for you. And so I wanted to affirm that question was good. And then also to add, because I was kicked out and couldn't join one of them, that it might be good to, before we do breakouts, to just let people know that if something happens and you're not able to participate, that there are people back at the ranch talking about things. And so you can come and join that conversation, and it'll be productive too.
Yeah, that's a great point. And thank you for your feedback, Nicole, on the chat. Appreciate that. So let's wrap things up for today. I do urge people, if you have the time and interest, we will stay in this room and gather again in about 5 minutes to do planning for upcoming coalition meetings. We'd love to hear from you if you have the capacity to do that. And if not, I hope you have a good weekend and a good holiday, and we will see everybody next week.